We're joined by political scientist Dr. Bishnu Ragoonath. A pleasant good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
Yes,
It's a pleasure to be on your show.
always good to have you on. Thank you so much. Last evening in Pointe-à-Pierre, the UNC had their Monday night cottage meeting, and the political leader of the UNC made it quite clear that smaller parties need to stop fighting each other. She said the time has come for brethren to stop fighting brethren. We have one common enemy, this government. And she made that quite clear. And of course, in attendance, there was the political party, the Progressive Empowerment Party, led by Philip Alexander, who attended the meeting last night. What's your take on this?
Well, basically, I think what the opposition leader has been or is telling both the PEP led by Edward Alexander and the NTA led by Gary Griffith, that they should bury their hatchets, not in each other's backs, hopefully, but bury the hatchet and if they already want to join with the UNC and challenge the PNM as a united opposition, challenging the PNM, I think that's what the message she was trying to send out to them. Clearly, Kamala Prasad Bisesa, as well as the PP and the NTA would all know for a fact that neither party, when I say neither of those smaller parties, the NTA or the PP, has a significantly large enough following to win a seat on their own in our electoral system. And a merger with the UNC, and in other words, not a merger but rather an accommodation, which will allow UNC supporters to lend support to candidates from other political parties, may very well be able to be enough to overthrow the PNM in some of what would be the PNM core constituencies.
Yeah.
So that's the context in which the message has to go out now. Yes, we could defeat the PNM, but we cannot defeat the PNM, and those smaller parties cannot win a seat on their own. But if they are to form an accommodation with the UNC and allow the UNC, well, in fact, where the UNC will ensure that it does not have candidates in certain constituencies, but give these smaller parties the opportunity to run a candidate and ask UNC supporters to throw their support behind that other party's candidates, then they have a chance at a one-to-one fight with the PNM in some constituencies, which it is hoped that the PNM could be defeated.
Now, when you look at it, in approximately in 2 months' time, the UNC will begin its screening for candidates for the next general election, which is constitutionally due in 2025. However, last night the political leader made it quite clear that the UNC must not be caught napping. What's your takeaway from that?
Well, the mere fact of the matter is that the UNC allowed itself to be caught napping in previous years, and in fact in 2015 when they were in government, they allowed themselves to be caught napping. We may very well remember that in that particular election, the candidate for Tunapuna was not named until 3 weeks before the election. And in that context, it was nobody else's fault, because it was the UNC was in government, the UNC knew when the election date was, and they played their hand and delayed their hand in naming a candidate, which caused them to lose that election. So it is in that context that the UNC has every right now to try to select and screen its candidates, its possible candidates, and probably even announce a slate. Well, look, this is a possible slate of 41 candidates if they're running all in 41, or if they are running only in Trinidad. Here's a slate of 39 candidates that we have now. Notwithstanding that they may have a slate of 39 candidates in Trinidad, that doesn't mean to say that as we get closer to the election, they may very well form an accommodation and have some of their candidates in some of the stronger PNM seats withdraw and give way to candidates from other parties. But in that context, but notwithstanding, in the event that you don't have such an accommodation, the fact is that the UNC must have its candidates ready and waiting. So whenever the election bell is called, rang, and once the bell rings, the UNC could now say, here's my slate of candidates. Even if I don't get an accommodation with anybody else, I am ready for the election.
Now, we had Senator Wade Mark on before you, and I asked him the question because last night at the cottage meeting, he made the statement that the UNC has one leader, one mission, and one party. Basically, what he's saying is that it's okay for anyone to have that ambition and aspiration to move up into the rank and file of the party. However, timing at this time will not allow someone to just believe that we need to have internal elections. What message is that we can pick up there?
Well, I think the message there is simply one that, well, I mean, I'm taking what you had just said. The message is there is that the UNC is going to go into this election eyes wide open with one leader. They do not have time now to treat with the issues with regard to internal elections. They may not want to treat with that internal elections, because internal elections, this is not only a UNC issue. This is all political parties. The PNM has made it quite clear in their constitution that there will never be a PNM convention in the year that there's a general election or there's in an election year. Why? Because you don't want at the convention any display of challenges to the leadership and so on. And that is the same message that the UNC is now adopting, that we are, whoever is the leader now, that is the leader that's going to take us into the general election. We are not going to open the doors for any mudslinging amongst our own that will cause people to lose respect and regard for our own party. So that's the context in which it is. I am assuming that Mr. Mark was speaking in.
Yeah.
But it is not something irregular. In fact, like I said, it is a tradition that the PNM has. It is the tradition, I suppose, that the UNC is adopting now.
Yeah, and I guess this looking at it, this is something that means a lot more than in the past. I mean, you have the Prime Minister saying that this is going to be one political battle. It's not going to be easy, basically saying as much as this could be the mother of all elections. And so nothing should be taken for granted. So basically what you've said there is that the UNC basically cannot afford to look in any form or fashion to be destabilized before going in, as well as the PNM, but more so the UNC. Is that correct?
Definitely. The UNC, if the UNC really wants to challenge the PNM for government, they have to show a united front. And they have to show a united face to their supporters, and not only to their supporters, but to people who are sitting on the fence who are willing to consider that. And it is in that context, for instance, the UNC probably will not say anything with regard to any accommodation with any third party at this point in time. But they will say, look, we have our business in order, we have our candidates, we have our slate and everything else. But of course, that doesn't mean to say that we have closed the door on any accommodation. We could still work with that. But as we get closer and closer into an election.
Yeah,
for the time being, we are ready.
And taking into consideration what the UNC political leader said, she said, we must remain laser focused on the enemy and not each other. Our mission is to win the next general elections and bring about safety and security. If anyone is not with you, they are against you, and you are surely working with the PNM. Basically looking at what she's saying there is that, listen, it's either you're in here, this is not something that you can do with your handbrakes on. Either you're fully in, you're fully committed, or simply, if you're playing games, it means that it's in the interest of the PNM. Strong language.
But that's political language, and that's the rhetoric that she needs to use at this point in time.
Yeah. And when you look at it, what are some of the things that these groups, these parties, who are, of course, saying, listen, we want to hitch our wagon onto yours and bring about political victory, what should they be doing at this time?
Well, what they should be doing is really to mobilize their own support base. In the same way, for instance, that the UNC is having their cottage meetings and so forth. This is what all the smaller parties should be doing at this point in time. I understand that the NTA had a meeting in St. Joseph over the weekend or late last week. I haven't heard of the PEP having any meetings yet, but they need to start getting their supporters mobilized, and getting their supporters mobilized to the extent where they could now move forward. Now, one of the things, for instance, that as we talk about mobilizing and the unity that the Kamala Prasad predecessor would have been calling for, and what Wade Mark would have referred to, we saw that played out last week with regard to the PEP, where certain members of the PEP were even challenging whether Philip Alexander was the legitimate spokesman for the PEP. But the people who were complaining I think they were former deputy political leaders who had resigned or something to that effect. So question is, if you allow that to continue, that would seemingly divide the membership of the party. And that lack of consolidation will serve the best interest of the PNM at this point in time. So it is in that context that parties have to put their houses in order. All the parties, the NTA, the PEP, the UNC, they have to put their houses in order, and then they could move forward and decide with a unified house, can we now work together with another party to bring about that change that we are looking for.
And is it as well as a matter of go forward, do what you have to do, mobilize, and show us what you can bring to the table? It's all good and well to say we are part of something, we have a common enemy, we have a common objective, but you need to go out there and prove that you're willing to put your shoulders to the wheel and prove it, because she made it quite clear that there'll be all kinds of tactics to damage the UNC from within and outside. Is she basically saying we are wary, we are quite conscious of any political Trojan horse that may try to enter, so go prove yourself, and then we put ourselves where we need to be to move forward as one?
Definitely, that is where the parties need to go. I mean, I have been, between 2010 and 2012 or 2013, I got a lot of licks from the OWTU when I told them that they really didn't bring anything to the table when they joined with the UNC in the People's Partnership in 2010, because they really did not bring a constituency per se. And for all intents and purposes, I am still hold that to that position, that the OWTU Fighton did not bring a constituency to support the People's Partnership. But of course, Mr. Roger had taken me to task for that, and I don't have a problem with that. He has his own opinions. But whether we're talking PEP today or whether we're talking NTA today, they have to bring their own constituency. And they have to bring their constituency to the table and say, look, we want to be treated as equals. But in order that but of course the UNC will tell them, but in order that I treat you as equals, you have to bring something. And if you're not bringing anything, then why am I carrying you as an albatross around my neck? I don't want that. I want you to bring something to the table. And this is why I say all the political parties have to put their house in order and then come forward. And as they move into the election, they will then decide how they're going to work that plan out as to how they're going to accommodate each other.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Bishnu Ragoonath. You have definitely been enlightening, and we will be checking in with you periodically as things develop. Any closing comments? Go right ahead.
Well, basically all I will say is that it's going to be an interesting a few months to come because, like I said, I'm waiting for the parties to put their houses in order, and we'll have to wait and see how they actually do that.
All right. Thank you so much again. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
You too.
Thank you.